This mysterious story begins with two children who are running away in fear. An unknown man has entered their home and is pursuing them. The brother and sister find themselves trapped in a corner, and the same man appears before them, holding a gun. He points the gun at the two children and suddenly shoots one of them, after which the scene goes blank. Now, we see a boy named Tim, who is visiting a psychiatrist. Tim tells the psychiatrist about a dream he just had, which involved the man who shot the children. Tim has been experiencing such visions repeatedly. The psychiatrist explains to Tim that these visions may be due to his past experiences. It is revealed that Tim had been a mischievous child and one of his misdeeds had escalated to a point where he had to go to jail. Tim had been imprisoned for a whole 10 years, and now his time for release had come, but he was unable to escape from the visions that had haunted him all those years. We then see a lady named Catley in an auction center. Catley is Tim's older sister. She used to work at the auction with her fiancé. Many people were gathered at the auction to bid on a very unique item that was presented, which was a strange-looking mirror. Many bidders tried to acquire the mirror, but it couldn't be sold at that time due to the high budget. For some reason, Catley was looking at the mirror in a very peculiar way, as if she already knew about it and had many past experiences connected to it. When Catley learned that her brother Tim was being released, she went to pick him up. The two siblings were very happy to see each other after so many years. They went to a restaurant where Catley told her brother Tim that he could stay with her if he wanted. Since their parents were no longer around, Tim would be all alone. Instead, Catley was offering him to come and live with her. However, there was a strange conversation between them that was very secretive. They were talking about breaking something, but Tim didn't seem interested in it for some reason. For now, he decided to go with his sister. When Catley took Tim to a hotel, she mentioned that they needed to break the mirror because they had promised to do so together. But Tim replied that he wouldn't do it, he was already tangled up in strange visions. Catley was very angry with him because they had made that promise, and she said that if he wouldn't help her, she would break the mirror alone. After that, Catley stormed off. Now, for some clarity, we are shown a moment from 10 years ago when Tim and Catley were both children. Their parents were moving into a new apartment, and all their belongings were being brought inside one by one. At the same time, Tim and Catley's mother bought a mirror. This was the same mirror that is now present in the auction center. The mirror was very large and beautiful, so they decided to install it in their home. Tim and Catley's mom and dad were very happy about this apartment, starting anew and keeping their family together. Once the moving process was completed, they began to settle in. However, for some reason, strange things began to happen after that antique mirror entered their home. One time, when Tim's mother stood in front of the mirror, the wounds on her stomach appeared to enlarge significantly. She couldn't understand why this was happening. Meanwhile, Tim's father sensed that someone else was present in the house besides them, although the identity of that person remained unknown. They started experiencing all kinds of paranormal activities, but little did they know they had made the biggest mistake by bringing that mirror into their home. Now, the story shifts back to the present time. Catley was peacefully sleeping with her fiancé when she suddenly had a vision. In it, she saw her deceased father emerging from the mirror, trying to strangle her. Startled, Catley woke up and began to scream, unsure of how to tell her fiancé about these visions. Therefore, she kept quiet and said nothing. The next day, Catley went back to the auction area and took the mirror to the apartment where she used to live. She had arranged for all the shipment items to be placed in her old apartment. Suddenly, she received a call from her brother, Tim. He told her that he had thought a lot about it and was now ready to support her plan. So, Catley invited her younger brother, Tim, to her old apartment. The scene then shifts back to 10 years ago, where Tim and his father were living in the house with the mirror. Tim's mother noticed that all the surrounding plants and trees were wilting, but she couldn't understand the reason behind it. In the garden area, Tim and Catley were playing when Catley's attention was drawn to a girl in another room. This girl was with her father, but she didn't look like her mother at all. During dinner, Catley asked her father about the girl, but he dismissed it, saying there was no girl and got up to leave. Tim's mother didn't suspect anything because she trusted her husband completely. The scene shifts back to the present time, where Tim and Catley were arranging the mirror. Catley had set up several video cameras around it, and she was fully prepared to continue with her plan. However, Tim didn't understand what was happening. His sister explained it to him. Catley's plan was to break the mirror, but before doing so, she wanted to conduct some investigation. That's why she had placed cameras in various locations, and she even had an ankle monitor that was connected to the police. And if they set a 30-second timer on it, the mirror would automatically fall, shattering completely. Catley was doing all these things automatically so that if something happened to them during the investigation, the mirror would break on its own. The thing was that Catley believed the mirror was haunted, and she wanted to conduct an investigation and show the world proof that it was indeed haunted, based on her own experiences. Catley had also placed some plants and a dog nearby, which counted as living things, and now she was fully prepared according to her plan. She was telling her brother and the camera about the mirror's past. Catley then showed a photo of an old man and said that he was the first person to buy the mirror and decorate his home with it. The old man had named the antique mirror Laser Blade. He believed that the mirror would bring him good luck and that everything would turn out fine, but soon after, a fire broke out in his home, and he lost his life. But that wasn't the end of the story, as the servants working there claimed that they could still see the old man inside the mirror even after his death. After that incident, the mirror was put up for auction so that people could buy it and hang it in their homes. Afterward, a man bought it and hung it up in his home, but the next day, his dead body was found. Similarly, a lady also bought it for her home decoration, but it was obvious that she was found dead in her bathroom the next day. This way, the mirror had passed through many generations, and wherever it went, everything in that family seemed to end on its own. This moment came when Tim's parents bought the mirror. Since then, their lives changed, and many strange things began happening to them. Therefore, Catley wanted to break the mirror as soon as possible, but after hearing all this, Tim did not believe his sister's words. He said that even if she believed all of it, he did not. "And if you think this mirror is so haunted, why don't you just break it?" Catley told her brother Tim that he could try it. Tim decided that he would break the mirror, and after removing the cloth covering it, he stood in front of it. He then said that they shouldn't break it because if it shattered, they would have to pay a lot of money at the auction. But Catley approached her brother Tim and said that it wasn't him, but the mirror that was calling to him because anyone who stood in front of the mirror found their mind being controlled. That was the reason no one could break it. So now Catley had set up a pulley to break the mirror, which, after being automatically activated, would shatter it within 30 seconds. Additionally, she had asked her fiancé to keep calling them, so if they didn't reply properly, he would come to help them, as not responding meant they were in trouble. Tim was now feeling even more scared about what his sister was doing, but they had to get rid of the mirror. The scene then shifts back to 10 years ago, where Tim's parents still had the mirror in their home. Both had been experiencing strange things since then, but everyone brushed them off as coincidences. One day, Tim's father was working on his laptop, and he had a bandage on his hand that was bothering him. So, he removed the bandage and set it aside. But when he went back to work, he found that the bandage had returned to his finger. Every time he took it off, it would mysteriously reappear on his finger. It then became clear that Tim's father was sitting in front of the mirror, which was causing all these occurrences. In the process of repeatedly trying to remove the bandage, Tim's father accidentally pulled off a nail from one of his fingers, causing him a lot of pain, but he didn't tell his family about it. Meanwhile, when Tim's mother was heading to the washroom, Tim's father was seen talking to someone. On the other side, there was a girl with whom he was speaking affectionately. When Tim's mother asked her husband about it, he angrily replied that he wasn't talking to anyone. A tense atmosphere had developed between the two of them. The next morning, their dog in the house was barking repeatedly in the room where the mirror was kept. Tim's mother became very worried and decided to lock the dog inside that room. After a while, when they opened the door, they discovered that their dog had mysteriously fallen ill. Although it lived for a few days, it passed away soon after. Tim and his sister Catley were extremely upset about the loss of their dog. The scene then shifted back to the present, where both of them were planning to break the mirror. Catley placed a dog in front of the mirror to show Tim the truth because she knew that when their dog died, it was not due to an illness but because of the dangerous energy the mirror had. She wanted to prove this by recording everything. However, Tim started to explain to his sister that perhaps she was overthinking it. They hadn't found any evidence yet, which meant that the mirror was completely normal. Tim told his sister that she seemed mentally disturbed. Tim then immediately went in front of the mirror and opened the door for the dog, after which he took his sister away from the room, explaining that he wanted to be okay. He had experienced many things in his childhood, but he wanted to move away from them, so he asked her not to include him in all this. Catley began to feel that maybe she was indeed overthinking it, and her brother might be right. The two of them headed back to their room, but just then, Catley noticed that the plants in front of the mirror had completely wilted, and the direction of all the cameras that had been set up had changed on their own, causing them to record each other. Catley and Tim wanted to know who had changed the direction of the cameras. When they reviewed the footage, a shocking reality was revealed. The videos showed that they themselves had changed the direction of the cameras, but they had no recollection of doing so. Both Catley and Tim were shocked by what they saw, especially Tim, who became mentally disturbed and couldn't believe what was happening. That's why he immediately called his psychiatrist and decided to step out of the house for the time being. But as soon as the call connected, he found himself inside the house, facing his sister. Tim didn't understand how he had gotten inside or when he had gone out. Then his older sister, Katlee, explained to him that it was the mirror's doing. It was trying to completely control their minds. So they needed to be careful. Tim began to trust his sister, realizing that something haunting was indeed inside the mirror. Therefore, the two of them started to carefully move forward with their plan. Now, the scene shifted back to 10 years ago when Tim and Katlee were younger. However, it became evident that the behavior between their mom and dad had changed. Their relationship started to deteriorate, leading to many arguments, and it seemed that the mirror might be the reason behind it, causing the entire family to break apart. Tim's mother began to suspect that her husband might be cheating on her. For this reason, she went to Tim's father's office to check. There, she found a paper with a woman's name on it and a heart drawn next to it. This was the name of the lady who had first owned the mirror. Tim's mother was shocked. How could Tim's father write that name? It then became clear that Tim's mother was standing in front of the mirror, and it had already started to control her mind. She became furious and tried to break the mirror, but whatever she threw at it did not reach. Before long, their shadows inside the mirror began to react differently, indicating that Tim's mother might now be possessed by the mirror. Blood began to seep from a cut on Tim's mother's abdomen, and she went completely out of control, attempting to harm her own children. Tim and Katlee, who were small at the time, screamed in fear as their mother tried to strangle them. Just then, Tim's father arrived and had realized what was happening. He quickly grabbed his wife and locked her in a room. After that, Tim's father stood in front of his children, trying to reassure them that everything happening would be alright in some time. Days passed like this, but all the food in the house had run out. When Tim and Katlee went to ask their father about it, he didn't respond at all. He just sat in front of the mirror talking to someone. Katlee couldn't understand why, if their mother was sick, their father wasn't taking her to the hospital. But he continued to ignore them, so Katlee decided to check on their mother upstairs. As soon as she opened the door, everything was in disarray, and her mother looked worse than before, appearing almost zombie-like. The good thing was that her hands and feet were chained, preventing her from trying to harm her daughter. Terrified, Katlee hurried back downstairs to stay with her brother. They were both confused about what the solution to this situation could be. Now the scene shifted back to the present, where Katlee and Tim were planning together to break the mirror. The electricity in the house had completely gone out, leaving them in darkness. They opened a battery-operated light bulb to illuminate the area a little. As Katlee moved forward, she noticed a lot of glass shards, but there was no glass anywhere, so where had those shards come from? When she checked the footage with the camera, she saw nothing, which made her realize that the strange things they were noticing were created by the mirror, meaning it was an optical illusion. Suddenly, Katlee's dead mother appeared before her, looking extremely terrifying. Katlee understood that this was also a vision that the mirror was showing her. In a panic, she accidentally used a piece of the mirror to fatally wound her mother. But when Tim arrived, he was shocked to find out that it wasn't their dead mother at all, it was actually Katlee's fiancé. Unknowingly, Katlee had seriously injured her fiancé, who was now taking his last breaths. Tim quickly took Katlee outside, telling her that everything might be fake. And the mirror is showing us these visions, so it's safer for both of us to stay outside the house. Tim also mentioned that you've set up the pulley in front of the mirror, which will break it in some time, so there's no need to stress. But after a while, the electricity came back on, and they saw that their brother and sister duplicates were present there, continuing their experiments. Tim suggested that it must be an optical illusion, but Katlee insisted that it was not. They hadn't exited the room at all. It was just their imagination that they had escaped and returned, but they were still inside that room. With no other option left, they both moved back towards the room. As soon as they approached the mirror, they suddenly saw a lady, the same lady their father used to talk to, who was likely the previous owner of the mirror. It seemed that the spirit of this lady was now residing in the mirror. She was speaking in a very strange manner, warning them that they shouldn't have come here to play, but this time they wouldn't escape. Then we are taken back to a moment in the past when Tim's father had freed his wife, but Tim and Katlee's mother was fully under the mirror's control, advancing towards them with the intent to kill. However, Katlee managed to get to a safe place with her brother and began to explain that he should run away while she distracted their mother. Following her plan, Katlee locked her mother in a room and climbed down through a window. Meanwhile, in the present, Tim began to see the soul of his father, who was searching for him with a gun, intending to kill him. In the past, when Katlee was small, she noticed her brother had not exited the house, so she went inside to look for him. But by then, their mother attacked Katlee, trying to choke her to death. Just then, their father came from behind and shot his wife with the gun. However, he was now advancing toward his daughter to kill her. Young Tim intervened, striking his father's hand and snatching the gun. He was about to point the gun at his father. but for some reason, he couldn't do it. His father took the gun from his hand and pulled the trigger, leading to their death. Now, in the present time, Tim was very confused about what was happening to him. He had decided that he would break that mirror at any cost, so he turned on the timer, which would cause the pulley to crash into it and break the mirror completely. Tim couldn't understand where his sister had gone and whether she would be safe or not. However, he activated the pulley, which went straight toward the mirror. Suddenly, Tim saw in the video that his sister appeared in front of the pulley, with her throat completely cut and she was dead. The mirror suffered no damage because of her. But when Tim looked from the other side, no one was standing there, so he understood that this too was something the mirror was showing him. In reality, nothing had happened. Now, we see police arriving in both the present and past timelines. In the past, when Tim was small, he was arrested for the crime of murdering his father. The police officers were taking him away because they found his fingerprints on the gun. Meanwhile, in the present timeline, the video footage included everything, clearly indicating that Tim had taken his elder sister's life. Therefore, the police took Tim in the present back as well. When they were taking away the younger Tim, he saw the spirits of his dead mom and dad in the house, and he was sent to jail as punishment. In the present, Tim was experiencing all of this again. He also saw his parents in the house, but this time he saw his sister's soul as well, which shocked him greatly. Tim couldn't understand any of this, and it seemed that he had lost in front of the mirror. The cursed mirror had controlled everyone's mind in such a way that no one suspected it. And that's where the story ends.